So I'm Jeremy, and I'm refuting Omar and his claim that it is unsafe and unfair for females to play on male sports teams. And Omar's secondary claims were that 1, females and males do not have equal abilities, and 2, females on a male sports team may contradict another male's faith, such as Islam or morals on hurting a female. And his third claim was that males and females do not share the same body structure. So for his first claim that males and females do not have the same, do not have equal abilities, he brought up an example of like how he knew someone, like a girl on a wrestling team, and that she got injured because she could not handle the guy's strength that she was going against. But he states that having females on male sports teams increases the likelihood of injuries or even death for the female because of their limited athletic ability. And I'd like to ask, where is it that men and women are seen to play in the same sports? And for professional sports leagues, they tend to separate men from women, so there's no showing that females and males, females on male sports teams will have an increased likelihood of injury or death. I found in a 2008 article from the American Journal of Sports Medicine that there was an injury rate of 2.33 injuries per 1,000 athlete exposures. And this shows that, that was for wrestling, because he kept bringing up the examples of wrestling. And so this shows that injuries for both males and females is not that big of an issue within wrestling. So keeping the, going with the theme of wrestling, that I found that wrestling is a sport where men and women are, they can compete together, and it's usually at around the high school level, but it's divided by weight class. So 2 people who have extremely different weights, they're not going to be going against each other. You're going to be competing against someone similar to your weight, and therefore you're more evenly matched, and it keeps the sport fair. And so if a female is competing against someone of her weight class, her chances of injury will be lower. And then he also stated that it is unfair for females because they have a limited athletic ability compared to men. And I found from it was written by Devin Kowalski, try to pronounce the last name. And she's a teacher and also has a master's degree in clinical forensic psychology. That the typical figures point towards an approximate 15% difference in average muscle mass above and below the torso. And this means that males typically have stronger upper bodies and females have stronger legs. And what this means is that a female, because they lack upper body strength, they can make up for it in their lower body, and vice versa for men. So if where a man will lack in his lower body strength, he'll make up for it in his upper body. And so that can help show that they have the potential to have equal abilities. And so moving on to the second claim, that females on a male sports team may contradict another male's faith, such as Islam or morals on hurting a female. I found this to be more of a claim of value because everyone has different morals and values, and so it's hard to state something as fact because everyone will think differently on the subject. But again, he gave an example of a female who was in a state championship for wrestling, and the male she was going to go against forfeited the match because he didn't believe in hurting a female. And I found that this actually denies the female of equality because you're refusing to compete against her just because she's a woman. And it also contradicts claim 1 because the girl obviously had to be pretty good at wrestling to be able to get to the level that she was at. And this can shows that females and males can have equal abilities. And then with his third claim, he stated that the males and females do not share similar body structure. And so he quoted from Dr. Dobson that the sexes differ in skeletal structure, with women having a shorter head, broader face, less protruding chin, shorter legs, and longer trunk. He didn't really give a good citation on who this Dr. Dobson was, so I decided I'd look it up, and I found that he was a an evangelical Christian author and psychologist. And I found that he's not exactly credible to be making the claims on what the human body is made up of, because he is not a physiologist or a medical doctor. So taking all of this into account, I found that his 3 claims lacked the evidence to support his claim that it is unfair and unsafe for females to play on a male sports team, and I hope that I was able to convince you guys as well.
All right, structurally everything was easy to follow. When you got on the first point, you go right to the injury issue. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I like the statistical information that you had that showed what the relative rate of injury is in the particular sport that the advocate talked about. I do think that since you don't have any data on the different rates between men and women in their injury rates in those particular sports, that it's a little bit hard to make the comparison. But I think it's probably incumbent on the advocate to be the one who's making those comparisons. And the question then becomes, what evidence did they offer that there was, in fact, this differential rate on injuries? The only example that they have is a singular example from their own firsthand experience. But there probably are people who got injured who were on the team also that weren't women. So what accounts for that? Anytime there's an injury, the notion that it's because somebody is not as strong, I think, is probably a little problematic. There's a big presupposition built into that claim. I did like the reasonable question here about whether or not there's really much worry about this when it comes to competition. In the professionals, they don't do that. Most of the time at the collegiate level, I don't know that there's much of that. Like you said, it seems to be primarily at the high school level. And I think that you indicate that there are limited circumstances where it's the case. Like I said, with the wrestling issue, I thought you did a pretty good job talking about the weight differential and how that shouldn't really, that should actually minimize whatever risk there is. It was pretty okay. Now here's a point where you make a presentation here when you talk about the difference in muscle mass, and then you talk about it being upper body and lower body. And later on, you're criticizing somebody who's making the same kind of comment, but your own evidence proves that particular point. So I'm not exactly sure what it gets you to diminish Dobson's claim down below, since the only claim that he seemed to be making was that the men and women have different physical characteristics. And you've already said that, and you've kind of conceded it, so why are you going after that argument down below? That doesn't make much sense. On the second point, you do try to argue it's a value argument. I thought you did have an interesting notion that it contradicts the first point. If that woman was in the championship round, she must have been fairly competitive. That seems like an interesting analysis of the argument. I could see how that would work. I do think that there might be considerations here, but wouldn't you have those considerations in any sort of circumstance? I'm not sure. Don't you have to make those kinds of choices when you decide to participate in a game? I don't know what the limitations are here. And why is that the responsibility of the rest of the world, and why should we be adjusting the world based for that person? Why is it more appropriate, for instance, to say, let's protect somebody's religious freedoms than it is to say, let's protect somebody's right to participate regardless of their sex? So we've got a conflict of values in this situation. Why is one more important than the other? And there's not an argument from either side on that, just pointing out that that's what it is. It's a value argument. All right, I've got to stop. I got to be quicker because we got to get through all these tonight. Brian?